Hello, today we are going to cover this assignment here, solving equations day 2, solving for 0, very important. So please click on this and open that up. Okay, you already have the assignment, but if not, you can open it here. But very important, I want you to make sure you read this first and translate this first. So please open this document here. Okay, so please make sure you read this whole document and make sure to make sure to read the whole document and make sure you translate it. But there's two main things. The product property says 0 multiplied by any number is equal to 0. Example, 0 times 8 is 0. 0 times 8 is 0. Okay, that's for multiplying, okay? Second one is summing or adding. When you add two numbers together, when you sum them, okay? When you sum them, okay? That if their sum is equal to 0, then those numbers have opposite signs. So -5 plus 5 equals 0, and 8 plus -8 equals 0. So we're going to use that throughout this entire assignment. Okay, so here we go. We have the first question. Solve the following equation for x. Now, we could use algebra, right? We could say if we want to get x by itself, we could say -4 to both sides, right? And we would get x equals -4, right? So that's the answer. But it's also good to remember that the principle, if two numbers, if their sum is equal to 0, then the other number must be the opposite sign. So if this is +4, if this one's +4, then the other one must be -4. And that's that principle that we talked about right here. And that's the principle that we talked about right here. So you may want to review that, okay? Okay. Same thing here. We see this as we're subtracting 5, they equal 0, so that must be the opposite sign, which would mean this is +5 or just 5. Again, we could go +5 to both sides. We could do algebra and solve for it, but the opposite sign, okay? All right, the next thing is this one right here. So we could do algebra. We could go like this, divided by 21, divided by 21. This cancels, x is equal to 0 over 21. And 0 divided by 21 would actually equal 0. So that's the answer there. But again, it's much easier if you have two numbers that are multiplied together. Okay, so now we're looking at the product property, multiplication. So so go ahead and read this again. This part, I just added this. That also one of the numbers must be 0 if their product is 0. Product is when you multiply two numbers together. For example, if 3x is equal to 0, then in order for that to be true, x has to be equal to 0. So if that's true, I can just automatically know, since 21, the only number I would multiply this by to get 0 would have to be 0, okay? So here's another one. If AB is equal to 0, what must also be equal to 0? Well, it could be either one. If it's B, maybe, but it could be, if you think maybe it's B, it could be, B could be 3, and A could be what? A could be 0. So maybe B, or maybe A is 0, okay, maybe, but also maybe B is 0. Maybe AB, so maybe B is 0, and A is 3, and that equals 0. So maybe A. Maybe A plus B equals 0? Well, if 3 times 0 equals 0, 3 plus 0 equals 3. So no. But here, it has to be either A or B. So that's very important. It has to be one of the two, and that's true. It has to be one of them. But it doesn't have to be A. It doesn't have to be B, as we saw from the examples. But one of them has to be 0, okay? Okay, so the next one here, we just have letters, right? So if A plus B equals 0, then B is equal to what? Okay, now we're going to go back to this principle here, and it says the summing property. So please go ahead and read this, but basically what it says is they must have an opposite sign. So two numbers together, -5 and 5, or 8 and -8 if they equal 0. So if we come up here, then what is b equal to? Well, that plus a is equal to 0, so that means b must be equal to the opposite of a. It's the opposite sign, so it has to be negative a, right? So that if you have a plus negative a, we know that's equal to 0, right? So that's why b would have to be equal to that, okay? Now we have one over here. Now we're setting this equal to 0, which is the following things. So what do? We go x plus 6 equals 5. If we want that to equal 0, we're not solving for x, right? We're trying to make the equation equal to 0, so that's different. We're making the equation equal to 0. So what do? We want 0 over here on this side, right? And then the rest over here. So now instead of subtracting 6, we're going to subtract 5, right? 5 minus 5 is 0, but we have to do that here too. So we go x, and then 6 minus that, that's plus 1 equals 0. So that's what we're trying to do, which is this one right here. Okay, we're trying to make it equal to 0. Okay, you try number 7, and then come back and I'll show you. Again, we're making the equation equal to 0. Okay, have you tried? Okay, so again, we want this. So now we want the right side, so we have to subtract 3, and we get x, and then this is minus 9 equals 0. So that is going to be a. Again, we want the equation equal to 0. We're not solving for x. We're not solving for x. We're solving for an equation equal to 0. Okay? Now here we're solving for x. That's different. Now we're solving for x, okay? So what do? Well, it's just like a regular equation. One thing we can do is we want this to be equal to 0. So x plus 4 equals 0, right? Well, we know from before that the opposite sign is negative 4, and that would make it 0. Or if we want to do algebra, remember we can always do this, minus 4, x equals, this goes bye-bye, minus 4, right? So this is minus 4, okay? Okay, so try this again. Since it's equal to 0, we know that it's got to have the opposite sign of that, so it's going to be 6. But if you had to use algebra, again, you could go like that, plus 6, x equals 6, okay? So that's 6. Okay, so now we're going to do something new. This is actually very important because this is going to help us understand how to solve quadratic equations. Remember, when we take a quadratic expression, a trinomial, and we factor it, we get this. Remember that? So this should look familiar. But now what we're going to do is we're going to try to figure out what numbers for x make this equal to 0. So we're still going to do this. We're still going to use this property. 0 multiplied by any number is equal to 0. And so therefore we are going to use that concept to here we go, to do this problem here. So that means there's two possibilities now. There was a smaller number and the bigger number. So what numbers make this equal to 0? Well, if either this is 0 or this is 0, then this is 0. So we know that the opposite sign is negative 5. The opposite sign here is 6. So two solutions. Okay, what's the smaller number is negative 5. The bigger number is 6. Okay? So same thing here. You try this problem and see what you get, and then come back. Okay, again, we want this to be 0 or this to be 0. So what makes it 0? This is positive 6, so I need negative 6 is one solution. Now, why is that? Let's try this over here. So if we use negative 6, right, it would be negative 6 plus 6, and then this is equal to 0, right? And then negative 6 over here plus 14 is 8. But it still is equal to 0 because 0 times anything is equal to 0. So as long as we can make that equal to one of these, either that's 0 or that's 0, then the whole equation equals 0. That's our goal. Okay? So again, so if this is negative 14, so this would be what? The opposite sign of this one is going to be, this is positive 14, so this is negative 14. So the smaller, negative 14, the bigger, in this case, is negative 6. Remember, the more negative it is, the smaller it is, right? Okay, so you try this one and then see what you get and come back. Okay, so in this one here, negative 6, so this is going to be positive 6. Negative 12, so this is positive 12. Okay, smaller number is positive 6. Bigger number is positive 12. And again, if you want to remember, you can take this x minus 6 times x minus 12. If this is 6, then I have 6 minus 6, 6 minus 12. This is 0, negative 6. And 0 times negative 6 is 0. See, so it works. Okay, we have one more problem, which is 16 through 17, and then you'll be able to do practice questions. Okay, so remember, this is a little bit different. Here we have that, so you should know that the opposite of plus 16 is minus 16. But what is this? What is that? Well, think of this one as you need either this to be 0 or that to be 0. So that means if this is 0, if x is equal to 0, then this would be 0 times 0 plus 16 equals 0. 0 times 16 equals 0. So either x could be negative 16, that would make this 0, or this 0 would just be only 0, okay? So the smaller number again is negative 16, the bigger one is 0. Okay, so now you are ready for practice questions. See the next page, you're going to have practice questions here all the way to there. It should be a pretty quick, there's a lot of questions, but it should be very quick and fast if you understand the concepts. Make sure you, when you are finished, that you enter your answers into Canvas to receive credit. So that's it, guys. Good luck.